Lead. Most Christians are decent followers. The very first thing that Jesus said was, "Follow me." And the disciples had to begin to follow. And there's something in this. But before very long, you should begin to discover that you can also lead. You're a king and a priest. You're light and salt. There's a purpose for your life. There's a leadership that only you can give. And you can make such a difference in what you do. A friend of mine recently had a vision, and he was going towards Jesus, and he was running towards him with his arms outstretched, and then Jesus said, "Stop," put his hand up, and then told him to look around, turn around. And when he looked around, there were thousands of people behind him. And the very fact of his salvation had changed the course of others' life. Lead. My dad was raised in Newkirk, Oklahoma, and it was in a family that was dysfunctional to the eyeballs. They were drunks, and they were the children of drunks and alcoholics. And he, at 8 years old, would have to work at the grocery store to bring money home so they would have food to eat. And there was a lady that was at the Presbyterian Church. I don't know how many times my dad told me this story, that God had spoken to her to go and pick up the kids of alcoholics. And she went across the tracks and picked my dad and my uncle up, actually, and led them to the Lord. And they never turned back. And in fact, my dad then would lead my grandparents to the Lord and my great-grandparents, amen, because of this thing that we're talking about, that we have an influence, and our lives have an influence in the world, and that's what we're here for, and that's what is probably the most important thing that we could have. Disciples were to follow Christ, and then they were to make disciples, teaching them to observe all things that God had commanded that would lead to Him. And so your life is not an accident, and it's not something without impact or force, unless you let it to be that way. God's going to guide your footsteps, and He'll take you down a path. It may start with something very humbling. It could be a friend of mine that he was a millionaire, actually, and he got saved. And when he asked the pastor what he could do, he made him the janitor, which was, I think, a little bit of ego. But man, he started to clean. And God used it to lay the foundation that changed his life. Amen. God's called you to be a leader.